Why is it not working? Oh well. Hello. How are we doing? Can everybody hear me? Just pulling up the chat here. Why is it not? There shouldn't be any echo this time. Last time OBS was using two different connections to the same input device. I am hearing. Why is it not? Is anybody else hearing echo? There shouldn't be any echo this time. Last time OBS was using two different. Let's see. Okay. I'm not hearing any echo now. Very strange. Okay. I think we're good to go now. Alright, I don't think there's an echo now. I don't know. Something in the room was playing. Wait. Okay. I'm not hearing any echo now. There it goes again. Just a second. Okay. I'm trying to figure out what is playing. Alright, I don't think there's an echo now. Something in the room was playing. I think I can do this. Here we go. Let me try this. I'm not hearing any echo now. This is very strange. Nope. Just a second. I'm trying to figure out what is playing. There's an echo now. This is bizarre. Something in the room was playing. I think I can do this. Here we go. Let me try this. This is very strange. No. Just a second. I'm trying to figure out what is playing. There's an echo now. This is bizarre. Something in the room was playing. I think I can do this. Here we go. Let me try this. This is very strange. No. Just a second. Let's try this. It's not that. Something is playing audio and I can't figure out what it is. Try this. It's not that. Something is playing audio and I can't figure out what it is. Try this. It's not that. Hello? Something is playing audio and I can't figure out what it is. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. All right, I think I figured it out, and I think I've got it working. Let's start this out, and hopefully it works. I'm just listening right now. Sorry about that. Something was playing audio in the room, and I think I've got it figured out now. Let's start this out. Nope. And hopefully it works. Let's try it with monitor off, so I can't actually hear my audio. Just give it like a 30 seconds here, because that's what seems to be the delay. I'm not sure. It's absolutely bizarre. This didn't happen last time, so I'm not very confused what's going on. Let's try it with monitor. Nope. So I can't actually hear my audio. All right, let's try this. Let's give it 30 seconds and see if we get feedback. I'm not sure what's causing it, like, at all. Absolutely mind-boggling. All right, let's try this. There it is again. 30 seconds and see if we get feedback. I'm not sure. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I don't have YouTube open. Like, I closed it. That was one of the things I did to try to isolate the problem. So nothing should be. Testing 1 2 3. And there it goes again. The phone. The phone had the stream open on YouTube. So I think we've got that resolved. All right. Now that all the chaos is over with, hopefully. It took only what? 11 minutes to figure out. All right. Where were we? Let's close this out. All right. We're going to build an RSS feed reader, a bot for Discord, using Nextcord. So I figured I'd get it started out. I've already got a token and a bot created. It should be in my get ignore already. So let's just pull up what we've got here. Let's see if we can't get this to work. Well, yeah, lots of stuff doesn't want to work right now. All right, there we go. Now we got a code editor. Let's just move this to there. All right. So you see I've got this token secret file. Let's see, can we make that bigger? Trying to remember. I don't think I can make that bigger. That might be a little small to read. Apologies for that. You can't hear audio from Discord stream. Only on YouTube. All right, so let's see if we can figure out why. The Discord. I probably muted it somehow without paying attention. Let's check and see if we can't figure that out. Do that. You should have audio. I see that I am muted there. But you can hear audio on YouTube. All right. I guess if everybody's on YouTube, I'll go ahead and just keep going here. All right. Okay, so I've got my little token file. I created token.secret, and I added it to my get ignore. I'm trying to figure out. Well, let me just real quick make this a little bit bigger for you. Appearance and behavior. We can switch into presentation mode. If I can remember how to do that. There we go. That should be a little bit easier to read. Now we just need to get our project. There we go. Okay, there we go. That makes life a lot easier for everybody. All right. So we've got our get ignore to ignore our top secret token here. We're going to go ahead and jump over to the terminal, which we will do that. Make it a little bigger. Make that a little bit bigger. All right. So what we need to do now is we need to add Nextcord to our project. I'm using poetry. So let's just add Nextcord real quick. We need to create the poetry project. Let's do that. We'll do that. That works. All right, now we can do poetry, add Nextcord. All right. A little bit at a time here. We're getting there. Taking a little bit of time. So how everybody doing tonight? Trying to see. Thought OBS gave me. Doesn't seem to be right now. All right. Oh well. So let me see if I can't get my YouTube stream back up so I can actually see what everybody's doing. Oh, there I am. All right. Hi, everybody. Okay. All right. So Nextcord is installed. So now we need to go create ourselves a bot. We're just going to go step by step. I don't have any real big plans here right now. Actually, you know what we need to do? We need to do git add our poetry project, which means we got to get init. There we go. Git commit -m create poetry project. There we go. Oh, lovely. Trying to think if I can bother to fix that right now or not. I think we'll just wait on that. All right. So we won't be using Git today. This is what happens when you use a new computer to do all this stuff. All right. So we've got our project. Now we need to create a Python file. Let's not show that again. Thank you. Go away. Go away. Python file. bot.py. All right. Okay, so now we're going to need to import Nextcord. You know what else we didn't do? We need to set up our virtual environment. Poetry, install. Make sure that's done. There we go. And then if I go over here to the project, Python interpreter, add existing environment. Why are you not showing it to me? Things are not going to plan. There we go. Oh, you know why? Poetry's being a pain in the butt. Where did it put my stuff? So we're just gonna do this. Everybody put their virtual environments in weird folders. So I have nothing accessible to me right now. I'll have to change that at a later date. So we're just gonna do pip install. Good old pip. And there's Nextcord. And then we're gonna go back over to PyCharm. It is looking for. It's just using the default installation. All right, so there we go. There we go. Now we can do client equals Nextcord. We do want to use commands. .bot or .ext .bot. They changed the name of that? Commands, there we go. Right. Bot. We don't really, do we need intent? So we do need intent. All right. What should we use for a command prefix? We'll do something like that. Just to keep it nice and simple for everybody else. And then we're going to come down here with open. And because we want to be nice and safe with our token, we're going to do this. Client.run token file .read.strip. There we go. That should work. So what we're going to do is we're going to do client.listen. Let's see. All right, let's see if we can't run that. Something blew up. This is just like my process. Like, I go line by line, do one thing at a time, run the file. Pretty straightforward. Why can we not connect? Why? Unable to get local issuer certificate. So it sounds like we need to jump on Google. This is probably another one of those, we just set up a new computer bugs. So just got to work through that. Did I have a, it should be over here. Here we go. Discord. So let's find out what it says. Let me do that real quick. This is what it's saying right here. On Mac OS, they need me to install the certificates. So we're going to come over here, applications, Python 3.10. So let me double click in there. Session complete. Let us try again. Shift R. Taking a little bit longer. We're alive. There we go. This is quite literally my process. Like, I just write some code and then I deal with the issues when I run it, and we hit Google whenever we have to. So, all right, what's next? So we need to create a command. I'm trying to think. What do we think we need to do? We want to be able to create an RSS command that we can create a new RSS feed that we're going to monitor, and we need to have a list of these feeds. So we're going to need to be able to store those feeds somewhere. And then we're going to need to be able to periodically check each of those feeds to see if there's any changes. So that means we have to restore any of the changes or the last state. So, like, what was the last item in each RSS feed? And then when we go back and check the RSS feed later, we need to see if there's anything new. So that probably means we should find ourselves a quick RSS feed that we can use to test with. So let's do. Let's look at this podcast right here, Talk Python to Me podcast. They have an episodes feed. Let's see if we can't figure out how to read that. There we go. That's what we're looking for right there. There's all this information in here as XML data, and this is what we're going to try and pull out. It's a lot of stuff that we got to dig through, but like you see these little items, and then they have this GUID, and that is this right here. Every item in this XML file is going to have a unique GUID. So all I have to do is say, store that GUID for each RSS feed we want to monitor. And then whenever we check, we look for the item tags, and we see if the first item tag is a different GUID than the one that we last stored. And if it is, then we know we have new content that we want to make a message in the Discord channel for. So we need to be able to store the GUID for each RSS feed that gets saved. Now, we've also got to store where we want these new item messages to be shown. So what Discord channel is going to have that message sent to it? So we've got to store the channel for the RSS feeds. We probably want to do the channel on a per guild thing. So like when you first set up the bot on your guild, you're going to set what channel it sends all of the new feeds to. All right. So I think let's start out with, I'm trying to think if I want to use like SQLite. Do I want to just use a large JSON file? I think just for like this, either one would work. I think we'll just go with a JSON file. It'll make things nice and simple. We won't have to kill ourselves. We can just make it happen. All right. So let's go back to PyCharm. And we're going to probably create a new file. And like anytime I'm creating new functionality, I'm creating a new file. Like everything's going in a new file. Like I'm not going to put the bot and my JSON file code all in the same file. I want to separate those concerns. Like you don't want them in the same file together. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a file, JSON-DB. And let's not ask this again. All right. Cancel. Thank you. All right. So since this is going to be working with JSON, we're going to do this. We're probably going to have a class JSON DB. And then it's going to have init. We're probably just going to assume a file name, and it's going to be at the root of our project. So let's get pathlib, just so we can make this a little bit neater. Will that let me import it from there? No, it won't. Import. We need some more plugins. All right, there we go. All right, so now we got pathlib. So db path equals pathlib.path, and let's have it pass in the project name, like the project file location. This way we can make sure all of our files are at the root of the project. Even if we end up at some point refactoring our files, and like let's say like the JSON DB gets really complicated and needs a lot of files, we're going to put that into a package. So if I hard code this, how are things going to change? Like if I just hard coded it to db.json, and then we changed our file structure, would that change where that file is? So basically what I'm doing right now is just future-proofing ourselves so we can ensure that the file is always in the same spot, no matter how we organize our Python files. So we're just going to do project folder, well, project main, project path. That's the name I'm going to go with. And it's a string. It's going to be a string. And then we're going to do project path. And then we're going to do .parent. And that will be the root of the project. And then we're going to do db.json. Right, like that. Nice and simple. Not super complicated. All right. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. All right. So next up, what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that our project, any changes, get saved. And like no matter what happens to our project, the database is always saved. So we're going to use a context manager to do that. So we need an enter. We can do that right like that. That's faster. All right. And then this, whenever we enter, is going to... I don't think we actually need the enter, do we? We can just do this. Self.data equals that. We'll do it this way. Self.load data. Right like that. And then we're just going to rename this. Def load data. All right. And this is going to return a dictionary of string any. And then from typing, import any. There we go. And then we're going to do, yeah, with open, wrong thing, self dot db path. All right. And then we're going to do, so we're going to return as JSON. This is all part of the process. You jump ahead of yourself, you get ahead of yourself on things, and that's part of the process. JSON.load from the JSON file. Right, there we go. That'll load our data from the JSON file. We can just real quick test this. So we're gonna have our DB. Right like that, and it's gonna be file. Right like that, because that's where our file is located. That's the path to this module right here that we're working on. So we're just gonna pass that in there, and then it's gonna pull up the, it's gonna create a pathlib object, and then it's gonna get the parent, which will be the folder that this file is located in. So it'll end up being this RSS bot folder. And then we're just going to do db.data, print db.data. And then if we do Command-Shift-R, is not callable. I see. Right like that. File not found error, no such file or directory. So now we just need to handle that. And like I said, this is part of the process. You write a little bit of code, you run it, and you see what happens. If something explodes, you fix that. That's just how you do it. That's the best way to do it. Like, rather than writing 600 lines of code and then running it and finding out some little bit of code broke and then another little bit of code broke, just find out the code broke as you're going. Makes your life a lot simpler. Trust me. All right. So now we just want to do, all right. There's really two ways to do this. I think, like, I ideally you don't put all of this inside of a try block. So what I'm going to do is something I literally just discovered. I've been doing this for 16 years. I've been using Python since like 2006. And there's still things I'm learning. So today I learned about this. So you're getting this as fresh as I know it. So instead of doing the open, we're going to use, let's copy that. We're going to use context-lib that exit stack as stack. All right. And then we can do this. Try JSON file equals open. There we go. Except file not found error. And then we're just going to return an empty dictionary. Else we do that. You know what? I'm trying to think here. Oh, yes. And then you have to do stack dot enter context, and we have to add that JSON file to the context. Right like that. Another way we could have done this, since we're already using the try, you know what, let's do that. That makes our code simpler. And like, this is a little bit of premature optimization. But like, if you see something you could be doing a little bit better, you may as well do it. Finally. And then we're gonna do JSON file dot loads. Actually, we don't even need. Trying to think here. I think that can go right here. We don't need this anymore. Does that make sense? Data equals, and this is going to get removed. JSON file dot close, because this is going to go in the else. I'm trying to think if this makes any sense. You know what? This doesn't make sense, because the problem is the finally is going to get run even if there's an error. All right. And so it's not going to close that JSON file if there's an error on this line, which could happen. Like if our file has malformed data, it could really screw with things. So I think I'm going to actually leave it the way it was. And like, this is really part of the process. Like you're playing around, you're trying to understand what you're doing. You're trying to make sure you get things right. And there's going to be a little bit of trial and error. All right. Now, the way this works right here, this exit stack, what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to add multiple context managers to a stack. And when this with block ends, so when it gets down to here, when this return runs, or when this return runs, anything that we've entered onto the context will have its exit run. So that will close any files we enter onto the context. So it's super convenient. So even if there's an error or a return, anything inside this with block, anything that causes the code to yeet out of there and go somewhere else in your code, it will make sure that anything you've entered onto that stack context is going to get closed. So that's why we're doing this. We're just trying to make sure that no matter what happens, our file gets closed. All right? Now, let's try running it. And there we go. Our data is empty. All right? Now, we have our data dictionary right here. As soon as we create our JSON DB, all right? Now, let's get fancy. Let's add the ability to set a field on our database. The field is going to be a name, like on our data dictionary, okay? And it's going to get a value, which can be anything. Now, it's not entirely true, because JSON can only work with so many data types. Like, you're talking like it can handle dictionaries, it can handle lists, it can handle your numbers and your tuples and all that kind of stuff. It's going to convert it intelligently. Like if we were to try to put something fancy on there, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. If like we were to like put a file object into our JSON DB, and then we were to try to save that later, it's going to explode. It's not going to work great. Just because JSON doesn't support that. So it's anything within reason. Like it's an explode. I don't think we're too worried about that right now. That's not something we can worry about that later. All right. So we're just gonna right now do set, and it's just gonna do like the super simple assign field key on the data to the value. Real simple. All right. Now let's do this. We're going to do db.set test to hello. Now when we run it, we see that our data has the value that we set. Now, when we rerun this, it's not going to have that data. Like if I were to redo that, put the print here, db.data, you see how it's an empty dict. You have an empty dict, and then it's followed by the dict with the value we set, right? But every time we run that, it's still empty when we first load. Like, it doesn't actually load, it doesn't save any data to our file. So the question then becomes, how do we do that? Well, we can add a save method. Let's do that, because it makes sense to have it. And this is just going to do open self.db path. And this time we're going to open it in write mode as JSON file. And then we're going to do JSON dot dump. And we're going to dump self.data into JSON file. Right like that. And that with statement's there. That's going to make sure everything works great. Because we're doing it in write mode, we don't have to worry about file not found. A lot simpler than loading data. All right. And now if we run this, it doesn't do anything different. But then we can do db.save. Real simple. And now, the second time we run it, you see the data's in there. And we could do something super cool, like set it to 1. And then the next time through, we're going to do db.data and test our field name. And we're going to add 1. So now every time we run it, that value goes up by 1. Pretty fancy. All right. But now let's say we get an error somewhere between here and there. All right. Real bad, because we're going to lose that added 1. We're not going to get that updated value. It's just an explode. We never save it. So what we can do to fix this is we can make our JSON-DB a context manager. Well, not like a full-fledged context manager. We just care about the exit. We don't actually care about any of these args. Like, if there was an exception, that's what this would be. It would tell you what type of exception. It would tell you what the value of the exception was. And it would give you your trace back. This is the representation of all that text that gets printed out into the terminal when you have an error. So we're just going to not do anything with that. But what we are going to do is we're going to call self.save. Right like that. Return. Super. Because we want to make sure we don't lose the behavior of the parent function. We got to get type. We got to just make sure we pass all these values up. And TB. All right. Now, to use that, oh, we do need the enter. We do need the enter. Enter. And we're just going to return self. This right here is how this will let us access the DB. Like, that's telling it when we enter, return self, and that when we do this, right like this, what we return from the dunder enter will be what goes into this DB variable. All right, and then we can get rid of this, and we have an explosion. But see, like, the code is actually still working because of how we've set it up. So we just gotta figure out what that error is. Super object has no attribute exit. Nope, I did not mean init. That just means we don't really need this right here. There we go. And that got fixed. And it still works. We didn't have to call save. It makes our code simpler too. Like, notice I'm able to create the database. And then I'm able to set a value on the database. And then it automatically saves for us. Like, this line right here handles opening the file and it handles saving the file. Like, we don't have to worry about it. Just making our life a lot simpler. All right. Now, it's kind of messy having to do this. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Like, we should have set a get function. Def get, and then field string. Probably should have a default. I'm going to do this so that you have to use default as a keyword. Just so it becomes, I like to do that. It makes things a little bit clearer. Any? Now, what if someone wants the default to be none? I think that's fine. I think we can do just this. I think that'll be fine. And then it'll be any. It returns any type because you can put any type into the database. All right. And then we're just going to do return self.data field. Well, because we're doing a default, we should do get default. There we go. All right. And then we come down here, db.get. And there we go. Now, let's delete the db.json file. Cancel. We don't want to do that. We want to, can I just delete you? There we go. That's what I wanted. Because the problem was, PyCharm was trying to be smart. And it's trying to protect you. So what that was wanting to do, when I did that save delete, it would have searched through all my files, and it would have found this. And be like, hey, you have that file there, and it would remove it for me. So this way, we wouldn't have any explosions. It thinks. It would have been wrong. We would have had explosions. But we would have been able to fix it. Wouldn't have been a big problem. All right? But now when we run this, we get an unsupported operand types for plus and none type. For none type with int. And that's because this get is returning nothing. It's returning none. Because we didn't set a default. If we set a default, we set it to 0, all right, then we can delete this again. There we go. Delete it. And now if we run it, we have an empty dict. It's an empty dict right here. And we were able to add one to test when we created it. Now, you might want to start that out as a -1 or something like that. But, like, let's think, like, what if we wanted that to be 0? And we didn't want to set the default to -1. What we would have to do is be able to do if db.has test. Then we do this. And we wouldn't even need the default. But if it doesn't has, we do db.set test. And like we're making a lot of duplications. So let's do this right here. Value equals 0. So we don't even need the else. We're just going to do this. Value equals, whoops, right like that. And then we set the value equals value. We hit the right letter there. Why are you misaligned? There we go. All right. Now if we run it, something blew up. Oh, we don't have a has function. Now, and this is actually, like if you ever look into test-driven development, which is popular at a lot of companies, you're actually going to write code that doesn't work yet. So you're looking to write code that's going to give you this error. Has no attribute has. And then once you have that error in your console, then you go write the function. So we do def has. What? Oh, I see. Gotta get PyCharm set up correctly. Field string. And this is going to return a bool. And it's just going to do return field in self.data. All right. Now, when we run it, it works. And if we come over here and we delete our db.json, it should come up with an empty dictionary here, and this should be set to 0. All right, so let's run it, and there we go. And then the next run, 0 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4. All right, now all of this code is extra, redundant. We have our database working. We can create it. It'll safely open and close. If there's errors, it doesn't lose anything. And all this code is extra, and we don't have to, like, it. We just can't use it for anything. So this is why you might have a test folder with all of your code in it that tests the code you've already written. So this way you have it separate from your project files, and you don't have to delete it when you're done with it. But we're just going to delete it for now. I'm not going to get into tests today. All right. All right. So now we have our database. We can go back to here. We can go back to our bot. And now we need to figure out, I'm trying to think how we want to do this, because we were going to have a command to add an RSS feed. We're probably going to have a command to remove an RSS feed. We're probably going to have 2 commands. So let's see. How do we want to do this? We can do client.command async def. Add. Yeah, we'll just call it add. And then it's going to get CTX, which is going to be... I like to add this because it gives me autocomplete. And let's do this. Let's change this to a from import. It'll make our lives a lot simpler. Bot and context. And we just got to change this. Get rid of all that. This making sense for everybody? Void says he's been using test-driven development his whole life and didn't even know it. It's a good thing to get into. It's a good thing to learn. It's really useful. It's really helpful. And it will save your butt. Like, it really will. Like, you're going to make a change to your code someday. And you're not going to want it to explode and destroy everything. So having that code there to make sure your code still works is awesome. It's just amazing. It saves you so much time. All right. So now we're creating an add command. We're also going to have a setup command so we can set up our bot. But real quick, we're just going to throw together our commands, and we're just going to leave them empty for now. So this way we can keep track of our thought process. All right. Feed URL. And that's going to be a string. I'm not going to do anything with it. Whoop. That's not what I wanted you to do. There we go. We're going to be adding 3 commands. Remove. And we'll just use the feed URL as well. And then this, we want to import. Will that work? I think that will work. There we go. Text channel. Channel. Text channel. And so this is going to be basically when you first invite the bot to your server, you'll use this setup command and it will save that data to the database. And I'm just trying to think here if we're going to have any issues with our database. I don't think we're going to have to worry about it too much, but we'll just be really careful. We'll have to think through some process here. The database is really simple. It's a JSON database, like something we threw together in like the last 15-20 minutes. So it's not going to be the world's most robust thing. So we'll just work with it. We'll work with it. We'll figure it out. All right. You know what? this is a great spot for that thing I was trying to use earlier and didn't end up using. Exit stack. Because right here, we want to open our secret file. And then later on, we want to also have our database. And so that's what we're adding now. So I'm going to do this. Let's get that out of the way. And then we're going to do exit stack as stack. All right. Token file equals self. Well, and you know what we can do? We can do this. Stack dot enter context token file, and let's use that walrus operator. Get it all on one line. All right, and then we're going to duplicate that. And then DB. Did we import our DB? We did not yet import our DB. From JSON DB, import JSON DB. To do this. And now remember that wanted to know where our bot was being run from. So we got to pass it that file variable right there, which is where the file we're editing is located on the disk. When we run this, that's what will be there. Now, the reason why we're entering all this stuff onto that stack context is so that when this with ends, which will happen after our bot closes, all of these things will be closed. And if you remember with our JSON DB, when it exits, which is what that with is going to do, when it exits, it's going to save our database. Super convenient. That's what we're doing right here. Now, let us see. All right, I think that's right. I think we'll find out in a minute. When we run this file, we'll find out if that worked. Actually, did we still have that? Yeah, we do. Print DB. Stop and rerun. It's right over here. There it is. There we go. Our DB, our JSON DB. And then we can do the same thing. We can literally do get test. Stop and rerun. And there we go. And if we just keep doing it, every time the bot starts, it'll show us the value of test. All right. So there we go. Now we've got the DB loading. We're kind of using global variables. That's not great. But we're going to just deal with that for now. It's not a super big deal. This is going to be a very simple file. It shouldn't be too hard to keep track of your variables. And that's the biggest concern. Yeah, this file right here is just going to be calling out to other files. So it's pretty much just going to be the very basic, the highest level logic necessary to run these commands. So like here, we're going to do this. We're going to have to get the channels equals db.get. We'll call this guilds. Because it's actually going to be a dictionary of guilds. And the default is going to be an empty dictionary. And then we're going to do guilds channel.guild.id. So, and then that's going to equal channel.id. All right. And then we want to do await ctx.send. Successfully set channel.mention as the RSS feed. What do we want to call it? I'm trying to think here. let's see. It's going to be the Rss feed channel. We'll just call it channel. I don't know what to call it. We're just going to call it channel. That works. All right. That's set up. Now, it occurs to me, we need to invite this bot to a Discord. Do I want to create a Discord? Do I have a Discord I can invite it to? I think we'll just invite it to the main server. All right. Anybody remember how to invite a Discord bot to a server? I don't. I haven't done this in a while. So let's just jump over here. Never mind me looking off. I want to make sure we're nice and secure. So bear with me while we need to be able to send messages. Just real quick. Run through this. Be able to messages and view channels. Give it that just in case. Don't need that. Let's do that real quick. All right. Copy. Now, URL generator. Bot. Copy. Here we go. We're getting there. Interesting. It's requiring me to add my security code. So we'll do that real quick. Oh, we gotta wait just a second here. Security code's about to reset, and I don't want it to reset after I type it. Very entertaining content. Continue. Authorize. I am a human. Authorized. Now, if we run over to the Discord, why is it not? Oh, I see. That's why. Boom. All right, so we've got the Discord here. We jump over to Hello World. There it is. RSS feed reader has showed up. Let's just create a real quick, well, we'll just do it right here in voice context. Then if we do RSS setup, that gave an error message. Missing required argument. Channel is a required argument that is missing. All right. So let's try that again. Make that a little bit bigger. RSS set up, and then we're just going to set up voice context as the channel. Ooh, it didn't work. Why not? Interesting. We didn't even get any errors. What happened? All right, so now we start debugging this stuff. Print channel. Super simple. Stop and run. Wait for it to start up. We're alive. And let's try that again. Oh, there we go. I guess we just have to restart it. And we see that it got voice context. It did that. All right. Now, let's add a real quick command. Get this out of our way real quick. Add a quick command to just check what our channel is. What, like, the info is for our server. Info. No arguments. Guilds. And then dot get dtx dot guilds dot id, and That's going to be none if it's not found. All right. And then the RSS feed channel for ctx.guild.name is, and the channel equals ctx.guild.get channel guilds. It's not guilds, that's channel ID. Channel ID. If channel ID. So we're going to have an if statement here. And then we're going to do that. Just, I want to make it a consistent data type. So this mention is just a string. And I want to have a string over here that says not set. So if the channel ID is none, it'll be set to not set. If the channel ID exists, we will get the mention for the channel. All right. And then, boom, let's rerun this. Wait for it to start up. We're alive. All right, RSS info. And did it explode? It exploded. We have an attribute error. All right, so we've got a bunch of information here. This right here is telling me that what's below here was is an error that was caused by this error up here. So that usually means that this bottom half is coming from whatever framework you're using. Whereas this is more close to where your code is at. And like, as you can see, like all of this is inside of the Nextcord package. All of them right here, like you can see right there, Nextcord, Nextcord, Nextcord. And then if I scroll up here, like you have Python, side packages, Nextcord, but then you see here's our file in the RSS bot folder. It's our bot.py folder. So let's see. None type object has no attribute mention. So why is it telling us that? Ah, we have a logic error. I said if it is none, get the channel. So if it is not none, that's not set. So we got a logic error. It was a simple one. I had originally just done if thing, which would have been if it was a value, it would have done the thing. And then I changed it to is none, which is literally the opposite logic. So we just go in here and we fix it. And like this is something I caught right away because I'm progressively checking my code. Like I'm writing 1-2 lines of code and trying to jump out and run it and see how it explodes, see what happens. Like you need that feedback loop. If you don't have that feedback loop, you're going to be writing a lot of code that just doesn't work and you're not going to realize it. And you're going to be 400 lines in, run it thinking you're all done, and you're going to have an error. Every time you fix an error, there's going to be another error to fix. So now the bot is running and I'm over here pontificating. Uh-oh, I reloaded Discord. How did I manage that? Come back to me. All right. Boom. Don't look at all my friends. All one of them. Yay! It says RSS feed channel for beginner.codes is not set. Which is funny, because I thought it said it right here. Interesting. So why did that happen? You know what? Let's try this. Let's try this real quick. Let's reset it up. All right. And then we're going to is not set. Why is it not set? Time to investigate. All right, so channel ID. db.guilds. db.guilds. What is happening? Let's do this. Print. Stop and run. It's empty. So the guilds aren't getting saved. Why are they not getting saved? Is it? This is interesting. Trying to think how we can check this. We can make sure that our exit is running. Print. I've saved successfully. Make that clear. So, all right, now stop and run. I have a bad feeling that for some reason, the way PyCharm is exiting stuff, things aren't running correctly here. So we'll just mess around with it until we figure out what's going on. Our usual CS process. All right, set up. Boom. And then commit to stop and run. And it didn't print out. Just went to we're alive. That means our JSONDB.exit isn't working. So let's try this. Let's not do the exit stack. Let's not do anything we've never done before. And just do things the way we normally would have done. As token file. It's a little bit messy, but it's familiar. So we're more likely to understand any issues we might run into. All right. Run it like that. No, actually, let's try running it in. Interesting. I think it might just be how PyCharm is messing with stuff. Like if I do stop here, I've saved the database successfully. Whereas if I did the run, it didn't do that. So let's put the code back to the way I had it. It was a lot neater. And then, no, I don't want to do that. We're going to run the file. We're alive. Let's just stop it. There we go. It saved the database. All right. So let's run it. Now, there's still some questions here. Because when I set it and then immediately ran the invo command, we still got not set. So now we've got it saving correctly. But it seems like things might not be correct yet. Just keep debugging. All right, so we've set the voice context. And then if I do info, it says not set. And I'm not sure why that is. It says it's getting an empty dict. db.get. Oh, you see, I see where our problem is. We set the channel on the guild, on the guilds object. But then we never set the guilds object back onto the DB. So we got to do DB set guilds. And this is a side effect of us rolling our own, making our own database system. Not the most advanced thing in the world. And it's got its own little hang-ups and quirks and weird things. And that's what we've been figuring out, Void. We're working through this, and we're finding out why channel ID is none. When it would be none is if you've never set it. So we've got to figure out why we're not getting it set. But like this is why, because we never set it on the database. So now if I do stop and run, and then I come over here, and then I do setup, boom, and then if we do info, boom, it worked. Now if we come over here, stop the bot, let's restart the bot. Then we come over here and we do info, it's not set. So why is that? Very odd. It's in the JSON DB. Ah, why is that a string? That shouldn't be a string. I'm going to assume that JSON wants these keys to be strings. So let us, and even on my set, I wanted it to be a string. So let's just do this. Let's come over here. And then when we do right here, make that a string. All right. And then when we come down here and we do, where is that? Right here. This needs to be a string. Stop and run. Wait for it to start up. We're live. And if I do info, there we go. It keeps track of it. Restarts. That was tricky. And like again, like if I had gone with SQLite, that's already got everything established. That's got systems already in place that work. I would have saved some of this headache. But like rolling our own is going to make things a little bit easier to just explain, I think. Which is why I went with JSON. Now that we're starting to understand how the little quirks and stuff, it'll be easier going forward. All right. So now we've got that set up. That's working. And like if this bot were invited into a different guild and it was to run the same commands, because we're doing this little guilds dictionary where it's by guild ID, every guild that the bot is in can have its own channel. So it's very convenient. It's nice and easy to work with. All right. Now, let's start getting these RSS feeds set up. This should be a little bit easier. Maybe. We'll find out. I mean, we've already gotten through this quirky bit, and it's going to be very similar to that code. We might even want to add a list command here, but we'll get that in a little bit. Actually, let's do that now. Let's do that now. Because that'll help us debug things. We'll be able to see if the feed got saved. All right, so we're just going to have the list command. Now, it's complaining because we don't want to have a function named list when we already have the list object type, which has the same name. So I'm going to call that list command, and then I'm going to do name list. All right. Now, again, we're going to have to do the guilds thing. db.get feeds. All right, let's see. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes lots of sense. And that's going to be an empty dict if it doesn't exist. There we go. And then we're going to do feeds equals guilds, because we're going to organize this as a dictionary of dictionaries, or not. Nope, not like that. We're not going to make the same mistake we made before, because this has got to be the guild ID. And before, we had to convert back and forth to strings. And then we're going to do this. Yes, that makes sense. So it's going to be a list of feed URLs. All right. I think we're getting there. We're making progress here. All right. Wait, because we're sending a message to list out all the feeds we have. ctx.send. Well, we can't see anything. Thank you, PyCharm, so much for obscuring our view. .join feeds. There we go. And here, feed list. All right. If we restart it, let me come over here. Whoop. RSS list. Feed list. Nothing there. So we probably want to handle that case. Feed list equals if feeds. So if there's any feeds, turn it into a string. Else, no feeds found. Feed list. There we go. Wait for that to start up, and then we'll do. There we go. Why? All right. Not what I wanted. This is what I want. No feeds found. Super convenient. So now we can add a feed, and we can make sure it's in the feed list. All right. Next step. Adding a feed. Now, we can copy some of this code. And let's not make the same mistake we've made before of not saving the thing back to the database. So we're going to do db.set feeds to guilds. Right? Yes. And then we need to do guilds string ctx.guild.id equals feeds. Make sure that gets saved. So there we go. Got our save logic. We've got our read logic. And then we're going to do feeds.append feed URL. Let's give some feedback. Wait, ctx.send added feed URL to the ctx.guild.name feed list. Let's test that out. Let's see if that worked. All right, back to Discord. RSS. Add. Now, let's come back over here. We had a feed. We want to add this feed. Boom. Added that feed to the beginner.code's feed list. And then if we do RSS list, there we go. It's in our feed list. So now we got to do the remove command. Like, see, these are much simpler. We've already messed around. We've already figured out what we're doing. So it's a little bit simpler. And kind of just copy paste these right along. And then we're just going to remove. And then we're going to do the same save procedure. And then instead of added, removed. Run it. And we're alive. And like, we just restarted the bot. So let's just see, did it save it? It saved it. So now we can do remove. And we want to do this. Ta-da. And then we do, let's list them out again. No feeds found. So it works. Now, like, let's say we try to remove the same one again. Does it explode? I think it exploded. Let's come back over to PyCharm. I hit the right buttons. What happened? X not in list. So we just need to handle that. And what error message do we need? What error do we need to capture? We just need to capture value error. So we come right here, value error. Get the right language here. And we don't want to do anything. So just pass. And just for efficiency's sake, do this. Since we're not changing anything, we only need to save anything if there's an exception. And we don't need... you know what we'll do? We will send a message. We'll send... was already removed from the guild feed list. There we go. And then was already removed from the beginner.code's feed list. And then if we add it back, did I have that in here? There it is. Add it back. And then if we remove it, it should give us a proper message. There we go. We removed it. It's coming along nicely. It's working. All right. What's next? Now, I think probably for the trickiest bit, it's not super complicated, but adding in the logic to make sure that we're checking for each new item. And like we've got to log what items have already been found. All right. This is the tricky bit. We're probably going to end up installing some packages to be able to work with those XML files in a way that's a little bit easier to deal with. Because I'm not a huge fan of working with XML. All right. So how on earth do we do this? All right. I think we need to... I'm just trying to think of the best way to do it. Because onReady has a tendency to get called if the bot reconnects. So if we set any logic in there to set up stuff from the onReady, it has a habit of causing it to happen a lot of times. So especially if the bot runs for a long duration of time. Why are you... I don't know what that... Why are you telling me that? Oh well. I don't care. The code works. I'm not going to worry about it. All right. So, what we need to do is create a new file. Right over here. Command file. Look. What do we want to call this file? Yeah. We'll call it updater. And probably make it a class. Do we need to make it a class? Probably make it a class. Let's start it this way. Async def. Because this can be an async function. Discord.py, Nextcord, PyCord, they all are async IO projects. So they use async functions to do things concurrently. So you can do things fast without having to worry about your code stopping and waiting for other code to run. All right. So what do we need to do here? We need this to start. Right like that. Let's import time from datetime, import datetime. Super simple. So we want to make it run every 5 minutes. Yeah, I think 5 minutes will probably be fine. How do we do this? Import Asyncio. This will give us all the functions we need to interact with the concurrent stuff that's happening in the background. It's kind of magical, so it can be a little bit confusing at times. And basically, I'm going to use this to get my loop. I'm going to do asyncio.get running loop. Because since we're in an async function, we know there's a loop running. So we can just get that running loop. And then loop dot all, let's see, call at yeah, update feeds. And we're going to call that I'm just working through the process of how this is going to function. I think we'll leave that for now. And let's just see if we can't get some more information. When is a float? So that must be a timestamp. And that goes before our callback. So having those tooltips, like that's why having a good IDE makes sense. Because you can just like hover over something and it'll tell you how everything works. So you can see like it takes the when parameter and it's a float, and it takes a callback, which is going to be a function that returns anything. And then it takes these args, which are what's going to get passed to the callback. So it helps you figure out what you're doing without having to jump out to Google all the time. Jumping out to Google is fine. It's time consuming though. Like it's not the worst, but it can take a little bit more time than just mousing over the name of the function right there in your code. So good IDs are a really useful thing. All right, so now we're going to do update feeds. So we want to, I'm trying to think how we're going to do this. Right. We're going to do now equals datetime.now. I don't care about the time zone because we're not showing the time zone to anybody. It's just running on the bot. So it's all internal. So I can use any time zone I want. And so I can just use whatever the default now time zone is. And then I can do now dot actually then when plus, then we need to get a time delta. This will let me add 5 minutes. So we're just going to do it every 5 minutes. Excuse me. Time delta minutes 5. There we go. And then we're going to do over here when dot timestamp. And that should, in theory. Now I'm actually wondering, I'm a little bit concerned that callat is expecting something went wonky. So let's just real quick. I'm worried that callat is expecting a UTC time. That's what I'm concerned about right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the docs for that because I am a little bit concerned about that. We don't want to find out later that we're misunderstanding something if we can fix it now. So asyncio call event loop callat. What does it say? Using the same time reference as loop.time. But what time zone is it? Interesting. You know what? I think this might be smarter. Rather than using call at, let's just use call later. It takes a delay. Where'd it go? Call later. It just takes a delay right there. And then it calls our callback same way as call at what I have. But instead of setting a time, we're just going to set a delay. And the delay is a number of seconds. Can either be an in or a float. Super simple. And we just want it to go every 5 minutes. So that makes our life so much easier. We don't even need date time anymore. Call later. And then 5 times 60. Every 5 minutes. All right. And let's just have it print started, scheduled, the next feed update. Right, like that. And we're going to change this schedule update. We're going to pass the loop in, right like that. Get rid of that. Just simplify things. We're going to grab the loop from the bot. And I do think we will use, we're going to use a global variable. It's not ideal, but it's going to give us some advantage. Like, I would probably use classes a little bit more. Like, I'd probably set up a cog, and like that would have a class, and that would have a variable on the class, the cog class. But we're not doing that right now, so we'll just rely on global variables in our modules to keep track of things. All right. And then update feeds is going to call schedule update, and we're going to need to pass it the loop so it knows where to schedule things. Schedule update on the loop, and it's going to get the loop right like that. And then loop dot create task. Now this is all a little bit complicated, and this is just coming out of my brain because I've done this a bunch of times before. Basically, I'm just telling the event loop that Asyncio is running in the background to check and see if this function should be called based on a delay. So it knows when the function was, when call later was called, and it's just going to keep track of that and call update feeds at some point in the future. And then inside of update feeds, I'm telling it to schedule the next update. And then I'm going to tell it to create a task. And a task is a coroutine. That's those functions that you see that are async def. That's a coroutine. And the reason I'm doing that is it's going to make our life a lot simpler when we go ahead and we start actually iterating through our all of the feeds for all the guilds and having to actually request them. And this is where async shines, because the async loop, the event loop, isn't going to stop when we call out to these RSS feeds. When we try to request those files and download them, it's just going to keep doing its thing. And then when that file finishes downloading, it will pass that file back into our code and reactivate our code. So it's kind of magical. Maybe one of these days I'll do a video on it. But like for right now, just understand that we can take a loop in a normal function and we can have that loop run an async function. Download, do feed update. Right like that. And do we need to pass it anything? No. All right. So then we can do async def do feed update. For now, we don't need to do anything there. I am seeing what we do need to do, because this is going to need our database. And we opened the database in our bot.py. So that global variable in bot.py doesn't exist here. Now, the bot.py is our main file. So that's going to get run. And if we try to import it from this file, we're going to get weird issues. Things are not going to go as expected. So what I want to do is pass that database in right here. And then I will pass that database back into update feeds. And so we're just going to kind of string this thing along and get it through all of the different functions. Now, this is a bit of a nightmare. Our bot is very simple, so it's easy to keep track of. It's not super complicated. If we were doing something more complicated, we'd want to look at using inversion of control, dependency injection, and coming with a more formalized solution. Like what we're doing right now is very loosely inversion of control, because we're passing the database down. A more formalized solution would let the do feed update call out to something that already exists and get the thing it needs. That might be done in a really transparent way. You might have an inject so that the whole system can figure out, like, okay, this needs to have these parameters, and it'll just figure things out as it goes. But for now, this is perfectly fine. We can just keep passing the DB around, right like this, and then we got to make sure we pass it into schedule update, and then this will take the DB right there. I'm going to import from JSON DB, import JSON DB, and we're going to do this, JSON DB, just so we can get that autocomplete. It's going to make life so much simpler. There we go. All right. Now, we need to get all of the guilds and all of the feeds from the database so that we can iterate through them. We've also got to handle starting our download schedule. So we're going to go back to bot.py and we're going to come up here. Oh, you know what? I think we can do client dot, you know what we're going to do? This is what we're going to do. We're going to do class bot RSS bot. It's going to inherit from bot. Okay. Then we're going to do def init args quargs super dot init. So this right here is going to call under init on this class, the class that we got from Nextcord. All right. And this is going to let us avoid having that global variable. All right. It's going to make our lives a little bit cleaner. There we go. So that's going to be RSS bot. And then we're going to do splat args, splat quargs, and then self. Trying to think. We need to import from updater, import schedule update. And then we're just going to do schedule. And what this is going to prevent is that issue I was talking about with onReady, where on reconnect, onReady runs again. So this is only going to run when we run this. I think this makes sense. We're getting there. We'll figure it out. Slowly but surely. All right. What I'm worried about is the loop isn't going to be set, which can be a bit of a pain in the butt. So we'll just do that for now. And then, so like we're just making a slight modification there so that it only runs once. And then we have our RSS bot. Worst case scenario, we'll just set a property on there, and then we'll have this happen in the onReady. And only if the property on the RSS bot says we haven't already done it. That's probably the simplest workaround if this doesn't work. So now if we run this, DB is not defined. And the reason for that is it gets defined down here, but this code is running up here. So what if we do this? Move all of this right here. That doesn't help us because we need that there. So it's just a matter, right now we're just trying to figure out where everything needs to go, how the logic is going to flow, and we're just going to futz around with it until it makes sense here. I think we're going to go with that other approach I was talking about. Updates scheduled equals false. No updates have been scheduled. If self.updates scheduled, we're going to schedule them. Client.loop. So that's going to get the loop from the bot. And then this is not going to be client. This is going to just not going to be self. It's going to be client. Because the self outside of the class is going to be our client variable, because that's what we've assigned this to. Self is just pointing back to whatever this returns, which is what we've put in client. So outside of the class, the self is just client, because that's the variable we've made. All right. Now if we run that, it should say, schedule the next feed update. We're alive. Now, let's just update this a little bit. Let's make it 5 seconds. And we'll add a print here. Let's just see if everything is working. Doing feed update. Right like that. And then we're going to run it. Schedule the next feed update. We're alive. Wait 5 seconds. Schedule the next feed update. Doing feed update. And let's wait another 5 seconds. And there we go. So every 5 seconds, you see it's running through the code, calling our do feed update. And this is an async function being called using create task from a regular function. Like, it's pretty simple on the surface. Like, when you get down to the guts of it, it's not so simple, but all right. So let us change this back to 5 minutes. So we don't want to be spamming. Once we get this RSS feed reader working, we don't want that running every few seconds. Like, we'll be spamming them all the time. Now, we probably want to do def start. The reason for this is so that we can, when the bot starts, we can schedule the next update and do an update right now. This way, when we're actually screwing around with this, we're not constantly waiting 5 minutes for the update to happen. So here we go. Let's see. We need to do schedule update, loop, db, and then we're going to do, oh, we don't even need to do that. We can just call update feeds, loop, and db. And it's that simple. I just like having this right here. That name makes more sense when you're starting this. Like, sure, we could just call update feeds, and it would do exactly what we need. but semantically it doesn't make sense. And like making it make sense semantically is good. And then like if we ever need to change how this starts up, we have that function there. We can go in and add that change. We don't have to go change anything else. We've got a good API that makes semantic sense. So we never have to make a change to our update feeds to try to understand that like this is the first time it's being called. We know it's the first time it's being called because it's calling start, not update feeds. All right. I hope that makes sense. All right, there we go. A line there. And then we're going to do start. There we go. All right. And it should now, when it starts up, it should schedule the next feed, say we're live, and then doing feed update. All right. So everything appears to be working. The schedule, put it for 5 minutes out. The doing feed update is going to get the updates immediately, as soon as the bot starts. All right. Next, let's stop that real quick. Next up, we need to actually figure out what is that. Why are you doing this to me? There we go. All right. Now, let us figure out what feeds there are. We're probably going to want to do for guild ID in db.get feeds. And that's going to be an empty dictionary if it doesn't already exist. And then we're going to do guild feed updates. And we're going to pass that dot items guild ID feeds. There we go. Do guild feed updates feeds. All right, so I don't want to have all kinds of logic in this function. I just want this function to do one thing. I want it to go through all the guilds and then update their feeds. So I'm going to create another function that actually goes through the feeds and updates them. Now, here's the thing. We've got it's got to be async, so we got to do await. So this way it'll work with the event loop to do things in the background while our bot runs in the forward, like runs while the downloads are happening. So we can do that. Do guild. Do guild. If we could spell. Do feed updates. Feeds. And this is going to be a list of strings. It's going to be the URLs of each of the feeds. Right like that. All right, now for feed URL, we'll just do, yeah, feed URL in feeds. Not foods, feeds. I think that makes more sense. All right. I might be talking to myself. This might be fun. This is fun. All right. Feed URL and feeds. And then we're going to do await update feed for the same reason. This function right here, all it does is I lost my mouse and I don't know why it keeps disappearing on me. All right. All this function right here is going to do is go through the feeds and update each one after the other. All right. Feed URL. Okay. Now we ought to implement that. Async def update feed. We might actually finish this before it's 8 p.m. for me. It's just about 7 p.m. right now. Been at this for almost 2 hours. Spent 15 minutes trying to figure out why things weren't working. But we're getting there. A little bit at a time. Slowly but surely. All right. Now we have a feed URL. And that's going to be a string. And it occurs to me, we need to be passing the database through this, because when we update the feed, we're going to get the items, and we're going to have to check if the database already has the newest item. If it doesn't, we're going to be sending that back out to the client. So we're going to have to be feeding through the command context, or the guild channel ID. So we're going to have to pass through the guild ID too. Do guild feed updates, guild ID, right like that. We're going to pass that down to here. Guild ID, going to be a string, unfortunately. And then update feed, guild ID, and guild ID string, right like that. Pretty simple, not super complicated. And then we're going to have to use Nextcord and Discord.py and PyCord. They're built on a library called aiohttp. So rather than using like requests or anything like that, I'm going to use that library since it's already here. We don't need to install something extra. It also has the advantage that it's designed to work with Async.io. So requests doesn't. So if I were to use the requests library, it would actually block our bot. It would prevent our bot from doing anything until it finishes downloading the file. So if there's any problem that slows down that download, maybe the file's a really large file, it's going to slow things down. It's going to slow our bot down. It's going to make our bot not work as well as we would like it to. So aiohttp fixes that problem for us. And it just works with all the stuff. It's a little bit more complicated to use. There are simpler ones. But like I said, it's already here because Nextcord uses it. Client session. So we need to get a client session because the way aiohttp works is it uses a session. It's an interesting system. And it's async, so we're going to use an async with client session as session. And then we're going to do async with session.get feed URL. Right like that. Now, one of the concerns here is, what if the URL doesn't exist? It's going to explode. Things are going to break. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, I'm not going to worry about it. Response dot content. I have to await that. Content. Right? I have to await that, right? And interesting. So it doesn't. It must only be for JSON data. Great. That makes our life a little bit simpler, I think. There's a package out there. A very fancy package for Python. XML to dict. Let's see. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. XML to dict. Let's install that real quick. Pip install XML to dict. All right, so now that we have that, we're going to keep this up here. This is going to act as our documentation to make this a lot faster to work with. XML content. Just looking through. Aha, here's what we're looking for. We're looking for this line right here. That's going to do from XML import XML to dict. Why is it saying doesn't exist? Yeah, I've got my import correct. Interesting. Very interesting. Oh yeah, your train's going by. I don't know if you can hear that. Train is going by. Yes. Do. This is interesting. What function? Oh, there. That's what I'm looking for. I was gonna say. I don't think. Do I need to await that? I do need to await that. That's what I needed to await. I needed to await the read. I knew I needed to wait something, but it took a second to figure it out. All right, data. Let's do print data, and then I think if I do RSS list. Did I turn off the bot? And we need to go over here. We need to go back to the bot so we can run it. But 3 were given. Let's jump to that line. The default equals. There we go. Stop and run. We're alive doing feed update. Thought where is this getting stuck? Loaded. Let's just add some debug information. Try running that again. Doing feed update. Why is it getting stuck? Where is it getting stuck? Updating feeds for guild ID. Run that. All right. Now let's try this. Print feed URL. Let's just see if it's doing anything. It's not getting anything in here. Interesting. Why is this happening? I thought we named it feeds. Let's come over here. Let's see if maybe, no, we named it feeds. db.get, and if we go into our db, test for guilds feeds, it has an empty list. Interesting. Very interesting. Ah, there are no feeds. So of course I found no feeds. There were no feeds to find. And like this stuff happens. This is just normal. This is a normal process. Just like, especially when you're messing around with things that maybe you're not super familiar with. Like there's a lot of stuff I can do that I can just bang it right out. And I have a little less issues. I don't exactly write Discord bots from scratch all the time. So, and we're, like I said, we're messing around with our own little custom database. And that adds some complexity to like some of the overhead, like the mental overhead. But you slowly but surely move yourself towards a working product. All right. Now we've added the feed. And now if I go to the list, it shows up. If I come back over here to PyCharm and I run it, there we go. Now we've got something useful. This mess right over here is all the data that we saw right here. It worked. Like, it just fell into place right there. Oh, goodness, Void. You sent so many messages. In which situation would it be not found? All right, so that was the old message. It's just waiting endlessly. Which function do you mean? It's just waiting endlessly for which other function? I'm not sure what you mean by what other function are you referring to? Like, nothing in here, like, that's the whole idea behind what we're doing here using Asyncio. Like, things are not necessarily waiting around. When you have the await, this function is waiting for this function. But the event loop will take you out to another function that's running somewhere else. So it's never actually, the event loop is never actually waiting. Your program is never actually waiting. It's just that one individual function, this function right here, for example, will be waiting on that. Now, where that could be interesting is, had gotten stuck in the function one. No, okay, I see. But like where, like that might be a concern is because we're awaiting this function right here. This loop is going to pause every time we await here. So you're only going to update one guild at a time. You're only going to update one feed at a time. And there is a way to get around that. Asyncio has a gather function. So we could pass in this part as a splat list. We can splat out a list. Like, I can show you. I think, do we have Asyncio in this file? We do not. We can just real quick import that. Asyncio. All right. And then, like, really quick, we can do this. We can do await Asyncio dot gather. And then we do this. And then we're just going to do a list comp. It's really simple list comp. Does this. Now, that loop is 100% concurrent. And if we rerun this, it should, whoop, wrong file. Rerun. Loaded, boom, still works. And now that line will do all the update feeds for all the guilds. Or all the feed, isn't the, yeah, all the feeds on the guild at the same time. So, yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. Like, this do feed update is going to wait on this, which is going to wait on this. And so it's not going to move on to the next loop, the next iteration of the loop, until this finishes, until this await is done. So it is getting stuck. But what's not getting stuck is everything else running on the event loop. So everywhere that a create task has been called, those are all on the event loop. It has a queue of all these tasks. And when one task, like this do feed, is waiting all the way down here for this to return, for this URL to return, some other do feed update is running. Yeah, it's like having threads, but it's all within Python. It's not using the system's threads at all. There's nothing happening. Like no magic happening in the background. I mean, there's magic happening. The Asyncio event loop, but you're not relying on anything. Like there's no threads running. For the like, there may be threads running that Asyncio is using to magically have this stuff happen without waiting on it. But you don't see any of that. You're just dealing with the loop. And the loop has a queue of tasks, and you can add new tasks by using create task. And each of those tasks that you create aren't going to wait on each other. They're not going to get stuck waiting for each other so long as you're using a wait. If you're not using a wait, and you're just having functions that are running loops and downloading files, the event loop has to stop because there's only one thread. There's one thread running, and all of this stuff is happening in it on the event loop. And so that's what you got to watch out for. That's why we don't want to use the requests package, because it doesn't understand the event loop, and it's going to get stuck. So that's why I'm using aiohttp. Magic is something you're going to see in a lot of programming languages, not just Python. Like JavaScript has an event loop, and you don't even necessarily ever think about it. And that's just magic that's happening in the background. Like if you're ever using promises, that's using that event loop in the background magically to let your code keep running while something happens in the background that's going to call your callback later. So that magic exists in other languages. Like async code, you have that in C#, you have that in all these other languages. So yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And like you can really dive deep. And like the things that you can do to make these run more performantly, like using this gather function, to have all of these update feeds run at the same time. So it's creating a new task for each of these update feeds. That's what gather is doing. And putting that task on the event loop stack, on its queue. And so those all can happen at the same time. They're all happening at the same time. And I put it in quotation marks because it's not. Each task, there's only one task running at a time. And when it hits that await, it kicks back out to the event loop. And the event loop is going to move on to the next task. So it feels like a lot of things happening at once, but only one thing's ever happening at once. And you're running like 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code, and then kicking out to another task. So basically that's what's happening. And the reason why you might use async over threading is because you get to control where you kick out. So it's a little bit easier to understand because with threading, the operating system and the interpreter and like all that stuff is going to determine when your code stops and it kicks out to a different thread. Like it can stop at any point. And that's where you get weird issues with like where like you might be changing a value and like you're gonna need a lock. That's less of an issue with Asyncio. Asyncio does have locks, it does have that kind of stuff. I'm not gonna need that today because I'm not really dealing with any variables that are going to be modified in different functions. Not for the most part. Like, I can't really think of an example. Like, it's such a rare issue where it's when you have multiple tasks that are modifying the same variables. That's when you have to use locks. And we're not doing that. So it shouldn't be a problem. Like we actually, now that I think about it, we'll have to watch out when we get the item from here, when we get the item from data, and we compare it with the item that's already stored in the database, we're going to have to be careful to not kick out to a different task, not to await something once we've loaded that data, and then before we save it. Because if we do, our data will be stale when we come back. So it'll be interesting to see where we get with this. Hopefully I can wrap this up in like the next 45 minutes. That'd be a 3-hour stream. I think that seems decent. I want to finish it before I stop, though, because it's not a big project. So let's move on to the next thing. I see we have just been going crazy over here while I pontificate about how async loops work. Like so much XML data. Let's get some useful information from that. Let's do that. That'll get us our keys. I keep forgetting that this is not set up correctly. I will have PyCharm set up correctly for the next stream. And then everything will be a lot easier to work with. So we get one key. That wasn't useful. So what we can do is, I'm pretty sure, and please run the same one over again. There's our keys. Channel is the one we're looking for. Channel. Let's run that again. We're kind of waiting like 2.5 seconds here for each of these because it takes, the way discord.py works, it waits 2 seconds for all of the data to come from Discord. So every time you restart a discord.py bot, it waits 2 seconds. And it's a little bit annoying. All right. So like title is going to be the name of whatever it is that is in this RSS feed. The description is whatever they've set. A link for like their website, the language it's in, copyright. There's a whole bunch of information here. Last build date could be useful for us. It will let us know that we could save that and we would be able to see like, oh, has this changed since the last time we looked at it? But I think we'll just stick with the items if we can figure out, are they in here? Item. Right there, item. Now I bet you item is going to be a list. Item. We rerun this. Well, I did it again. Gotta click this button right here. And it's going to wait 2 seconds, and there we go. Boom. There we go. And if we scroll up to the top, right up here, all the way at the top, there's my scroll bar. It's kind of dark, kind of hard to see. And there it is. It's a list. It's a list of ordered dict where you have a title. So let me see. We want the title. We want the GUID. We want the GUID. And then we want the text key. So then if I do item 0, GUID, and like some of what I'm doing right here, I'm literally just pulling from my understanding, from working with XML in the past. Like this text right here, that's how the XML is saying that we have a tag, GUID, or whatever, and in between it, we have some text. Right like that. Something like that. And it has an attribute, is permalink. And so basically that's what we're looking at here. That's what this at means. Like, it's just some extra information in there that it's got to all fit in there somehow, one way or another. But now, if we do this, and we rerun the bot, and this would have been useful to have some test data. But here we go. We finally got the GUID for the most recent item. All right. Useful information. Something we can use. All right. Now, what do we need to do with that? We need to check and see if the database has more information for us. Now, this is where we're going to have to pass down that database. Yeah, you've seen some videos about the event loop. Yeah. Yep, it's running in the background. Yeah. All right. So now we got to pass this DB from do feed update Let's pass it into here. And then boom. We gotta get the DB, JSON, DB. And then we need to pass that into each of the update fields. DB. All right. There we go. Now we've got the DB. Now, what do we need that for? We need that so that we can trying to think how I want to organize all this data inside of our database so that we can keep track of each of the feeds. So I'm thinking, how do I want to do this? I think we're just going to keep going. I don't know. I'm trying to think here. Maybe, well, we've already got it set up that way. So I think, yeah, we've already got it set up the way it is. So I think we're just going to do a new section in our database. And I'm going to create a function to help us with that. And this function is going to get last seen item. And we're going to take the guild ID as a string. And then we're going to take the feed URL. Right like that as a string. And then we're going to, and we need our database. Right like that. And this is going to return a string. Last seen item, GUID. We're going to do that. Make it more clear what this is returning, because it's returning a GUID. And so then we got to do items guilds equals db.get guild ID. Going to be items guild ID guild items. And it's going to default to a dictionary like it has been. And then we're going to do guilds.get guild ID. And that's going to be a dictionary. Because that is going to be a dictionary of feed URL keys. And the values are going to be the last item GUID that it's seen. All right. Feeds. And then we're going to do feeds.get feed URL. And that's going to return none. GUID. And we're going to make this optional. Return GUID. Right, like that. So that makes things super simple to grab the last seen GUID. All right. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add a function. We're going to do this. We're going to make this its own function. Async def. Get latest feed. Let me stop that so we're not hitting that every 5 minutes. Feed URL. All right, and then this, it's going to get feed data equals await get latest feed URL. Here we go. And this is going to return the XML data. Get item. Let's do it that way. It's going to be an empty list. and it's going to return list of any. We'll do that for now because it's a really complicated object. It's like a dict, so. Well, we could do that. We could do that. It's a list of dict string any, because it's even more dicts. Like this is dicts all the way down, and that's dicts with a T, like dictionary. There we go. And then I needed to import from typing import any. There we go. All right. So now we got our feed data. Then we need to get last seen GUID equals get last seen GUID from guild ID, feed URL, and DB. All right. Watch that. There. Now I can see things. All right. So now we have our last seen GUID. Then we got to do feed data. And now remember we got the items from there. If feed data. We only care about this if there's any feed data. If there's no feed data, we don't actually care. So we don't need to do anything. If there's no feed data, we don't have to do anything. If there were no items and it's an empty feed, we don't got to do anything. So while we have feed data, we do this. Last seen GUID, current GUID equals feed 0. Oh, and how did we get that? Oh dear, I should have copied that, shouldn't I? It was GUID pound text. I think that was how it worked. Print last seen GUID, current GUID, and then loaded. Why am I not seeing anything? We goofed up something somewhere. And it's probably in the other file inside of updater. Feed data is definitely not right. Get latest feed. Get item. Ooh. Trying to remember what the fields were. Print. Was it chat or it was RSS and then it was channel? There we go. We'll slowly but surely figure this out. RSS channel dot get item empty list. And then if we rerun that, we might actually get something interesting. Ta-da! All right, there we go. So we've never done this before, so we've never saved anything to the database, so we got none for the last seen GUID. And then for this updated data, we got the new GUID. So we're going to have to compare them. All right, we're going to have to pass the client through here somehow. This is, we're really pushing a lot of stuff down through these functions. And that's why you really want to think about having a formalized dependency inversion system that can inject all those values for you, all those parameters for you. So for the moment, we're not going to worry about that. And that'll be the next step. But if last seen GUID is not equal to current GUID, await await update handle new item. And we're going to need to pass in the guild ID. We're going to need to pass in the feed URL. We're going to need to pass in the DB. And then we need to pass in the feed data. And let's pass in get. We're going to do this. We're going to get all of the items that are new. So like, let's say the bot goes down and like five things get, if like 5 things get added. Yeah, I have a fancy not equal. That's the Fira code, and I'm using the glyphs. So whenever I do that and that, it becomes this with a strike through. All right. Well, what I'm going to do now is I want to be prepared for if the bot ever goes down. I want to be able to get all of the new items. And so we're going to rely on the last seen GUID to determine where we need to stop. What was the last thing we seen? Get new items from feed. And then we're going to pass in feed data. We're going to pass in last seen GUID. New items equals. And then this is going to get new items. Or actually, we'll do this. For item in new items. And then this will handle just one item. It's going to go inside the loop. Yeah, and it's the same thing Python uses. Python uses the bang equals. I just like having the fancy little slash through it. It looks pretty. Like it has a bunch of other ones. Like I can do that. I can do like that. I can do that. You can do this. We can get crazy. Do a lot of weird stuff. I think like there's like yeah, you have like that. You can do just a single line arrow. All kinds of crazy stuff. It's a lot of fun. All right, so where were we? All right, so we're handling new items. We're getting new items from feed. And like, see how like I'm literally writing like this really high level code that doesn't actually do anything. It's very abstract. It's just saying, hey, get new items from feed. Handle a new item. Looping through the items, handling the new item. I might even break that into a function. Handle new items with like a plural items, and then that'll just have the loop with that. So yeah, I can do some crazy art with those arrows. Yep, for sure. And there's like a 30-second delay. There's a good bit of delay here. So I see your message, I start talking, and then you say something, I start talking. So that seems weird. That's why that's happening. I'll have to figure out if there's a way to get rid of that delay. I think there is. I just don't know what it is yet. All right. So there we're going to handle item. This is going to update our database with the new item. Actually, it may not. Actually, it may not, because we know what the current GUID is. This is just going to go through and handle each one. And then we'll have a function, save new GUID. And that's going to need guild ID. It's going to need all the same parameters as that function up there. Right like that. And it's also going to need current GUID. There we go. That's going to go inside here. Right like that. All right. One function at a time. We're slowly developing the logic of what's going to happen inside this function. All right. And like once this falls into place, it's going to just be, it should just work. Like, we're really close here. Let me implement that save new GUID. Because it's actually going to be the mirror of this new GUID string. And it's not going to return anything. Save new GUID. Items, get, feeds, get rid of that. And then this is going to become this equals new GUID. And then we do guilds, guild ID equals feeds. Just the reason I'm doing that is because if it's a new dictionary, it's not going to be inside the guilds dictionary. So this is ensuring it gets put into that guilds dictionary. And then we're going to do db.set items to guilds. There we go. So that's going to handle all of the saving of the new GUID for that feed in that guild. All right. All right. So now that we got that implemented, get new items from feed. This is just going to be another function. And what parameters is that getting? That's getting feed data. That's a list of dicts. I'm just going to do that because the dicts are kind of complicated. They have a bunch of data in. And this is one of the downfalls of XML. It's just like the complexity, the amount of data that's in there that just like got to be structured one way or another. And like you run into the same thing with JSON. But there's just like so much less data. There's so much less metadata. So your dictionaries in JSON tend to be less deep. It's more just the data you need. All right. So now, where last seen GUID. GUID. And that's a string. And this is going to return a list of dicts. And so then we're going to go through for item in feed data. If items equals, that's going to be an empty list because we're going to go through all the feed data, checking each item until we find an item that matches the last GUID. Now, it occurs to me that the first time this runs on a guild, it's going to just announce all of the new items. So we're probably going to want to add something where it checks for the latest GUID. Actually, you know what we'll do? If the last seen GUID, is none, break. That'll prevent it from going through all of the items. And so like the first time it runs, it's not going to announce every single episode of the podcast that has ever been. Like with Talk Python, I've been listening to them since 2015. It's a new episode every week. That's like 7 years ago. Like they have a lot of episodes. We don't want a new message for every single one of them. I'm still going to be ready to hit this big red square just in case we do end up announcing everything by mistake because we overlooked something. But I think we'll be fine. With this check, it should protect us. It should. Hopefully. All right. So now we're going through the feed data. And we're building an items list. And we're going to return those items. And if item GUID text is not equal to last seen GUID items.append item. There we go. And then we're going to return that. It could. And we probably should put a limit on this. For now, I'm not going to worry about that. I don't know. Do we want it to announce the last 5? Because, like, if people are interested, they will see the 1 and go and look for the others. I think the idea here, at least for me, is to announce the ones they haven't seen. And if we haven't seen any, we probably don't necessarily care about the old ones. So I think I'm happy with this right now. Once we get this working, and we get it into the server, and we get it working, we might change our minds. We might decide to do something different. For now, I think I'm going to leave it the way it is. I definitely probably want to put some limiter on it in the future, for sure. All right, but there we go. Now we're getting all the new items from the feed up to the last seen GUID. You know what? Let's do the limiter now. Let's do the limiter now. And there's a really cool way we can do this. From, is it itertools? Import. Oh goodness, what is it called? Let's just import itertools. Itertools. And we can jump back to my code, please. I'm so used to how I had it configured on the other computer. And I just haven't got this one set up yet. And then we do itertools dot not count islice. I can't remember exactly the parameters. Stop. So it's just the second parameter. Stop after 5. So what that'll do, it'll take this, which is an iterable, and islice will only give us the first, in this case, 5 items from that iterable. Once we hit that limit, it'll stop iterating and it'll return the items. So this way, if we goof anything up, we'll never get more than 5 announcements. All right, so I think that's done. Handle new item. So we need to implement this. I'm trying to see if I can remember what the default commands are, and I can't remember. You know what? Let's just copy the whole thing. And make a spot for our function. Async def. Boom. This is a dict of some type. It's a string. It's a string. It's a JSON DB. All right. And now I think for the moment, we're just going to do this. We're going to print the name of, what were the keys? We can jump over to Chrome. Let's go all the way to the top here. Item title. Title is what we're looking for. Now, we're going to want to do some HTML stuff because we don't want to deal with that weird symbol. Well, actually, you know what? That might be the... Oh, that's the episode number. We will have to watch out for HTML stuff. Because to make HTML, like here you see, here we go. We've got like an LT, we got a GT. Those are your less than and greater than. And because like you got a BR right here with an LT and a GT, that's your angle brackets with BR in the middle. And the reason they have to do that is because since it's in XML, those tags are going to conflict with the XML tags. So if we want to show any of this, we're going to have to do some work. Like you can see, like here's a link that's got the and LT. So like there's a lot of messy stuff in here because it's inside of XML. And another downside of XML, quite literally. Like, I mean, I guess if you were to embed JSON into JSON and you like, it would get messy, but it's not really something you run into as much as like you want to embed HTML inside an XML document. All right. So there are two things that we are interested in here. We want the title, and then they have a link to the episode, which I think is what we want. So I think we care about title, and I think we care about link. And because there's no attributes, I'm not sure. Well, yeah, you'd have to replace every LT and GT with the correct angle brackets. There are usually functions built into the packages and stuff that would handle that for you. So you just pass it to that function and it handles expanding it for you. It's worse if you're putting this into like Discord where you've got to use Markdown. But like you're going to probably have to expand this into HTML and then find some package that'll convert that HTML into Markdown. So there's a lot of work that's going to go into that kind of stuff. So let's come over here. The tricky bit here is going to be that on the second run, we're not actually going to get this to run because we're going to store that GUID. So I'm going to actually not save the GUID. This way, when we run it, it'll always show us at least one. And at some point, we'll remove that. And then we're going to do item. And then it was title. And I want to do item link. And if we, okay, stop and run. There we go. I see. Very nice. There we go. All right. We should have the link. Oh, there we go. Yep, the link worked. So we have the title. We have the title right here. And then we have the link down here. Pretty fancy. Pretty fancy. We can hop out into... I can't pull it over because we're over here. We can do this. And see, the link brought us right to the episode. We can listen to it and everything. Very fancy. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Progress is happening. Now, the problem is, we want to, from here, to send we want to send this data out to our channel on Discord. So we got to do some fancy stuff here. Some fancy footwork. We don't actually need the feed URL here, do we? I'm trying to think. Yeah, we don't need the feed URL. So we're going to get rid of that. Handle new. We've got the feed URL. We don't need it there. But now we need to come up here. And we got to do client. That's going to be our bot. And we need to just pass it through to all the things. Right like this. Client. 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 And like you can see what a mess this is. So like if I had used a class, I could have just done class and then in the init taken in the client and then set the client on a property of the class. And then all of these functions would exist on the class, and then we could do self.client. But instead, I have to pass everything down through all of these functions. And so that's why you might use a class instead of functions. And we're this close, and it's almost 8 o'clock. It's almost 8 o'clock, and we're that close. So we are getting there. We're almost done. And we got to just keep passing this client down, down, down through all of these functions until we get to where we need it. Like, notice none of these functions are actually using client. Just passing it through, stringing it through. All right. We're almost there. We've got the client down to handle new item. Right here. Client. All right. Now, let's create a function to get the channel. Def get channel from or get guild feed update channel. And this is going to require the DB. It's going to require the guild ID. And it's going to require the client. And it's going to return, let us from Nextcord import client. And what else do we need? Text channel. Come back down here. Hotkeys are amazing. I just jumped from the top of the file right to where I last was in the file by pressing a hotkey. It's life-changing. It's a time saver. Learn your hotkeys. All right, so there we go. Now we have a text channel. There we go. And so what we're going to do is DB. This is going to be guild. Let's jump back. Where was that? That was in bot.py setup. Here. Info. Info's got the one we want. This one right here. So we're just going to jump back over there. Channel ID. Guilds. Default. String. And then we just pass it. We've got the guild ID. Nice and neat. Already a string. Don't even need to convert it. There we go. If channel ID, we don't want to explode. If we can help it, we don't want to explode. If something happens and they unset their channel, we don't want to explode. So, all right, now we have the channel ID. We're going to return text channel. Nope. We're going to do client.get channel from channel ID. Why is it? Oh, I know why it's complaining. Because the way they did their annotations, things are a little weird. Guild channel, yeah. So it'll be correct. I'm pretty sure. Get guild. All right. Now let's copy that name. And let's go back up here. Channel equals DB, guild ID, and client. If channel, it'll be none if for some reason it wasn't in the database. Then we can do await channel.send new episode. Boom. /n. And then we'll do item title. And then we'll do item link. Stop and run. Let's see if we pull over to Discord. Did something explode? Something exploded. Ah, yes. We forgot to add the client to our start call. So we had to go back over to bot.py. And where are we calling start? There it is. And the client was the last parameter. So we just do client. And we run. All right. Boom. It worked. Pretty awesome. Now we can add any RSS feed we want to this on any guild that this bot is in, and it'll send it in that channel every time. And when you look at that, it's not even 8 p.m. 4 minutes to spare. It is working. I am impressed with myself. All right, where did chat go? There it is. Okay. Any questions? I'll wait a few seconds, because I think we're done here. We've got it working. Every 5 minutes, it's going to check. Like, let's just make sure it's checking. It's like, let's get rid of the 5-second wait, or the 5-minute wait, and we're going to just run the bot again. And then we'll come back over here. It just announced it. New episode 359. And announce it again. Every 5 seconds, it's going to announce it. So let's stop that bot. Now, while it's still set to 5 seconds, let's come back down here and make sure that it doesn't announce more and more and more. It just saves the GUID. All right. So let's run that bot again. All right. Did it function? It looks like it did. We got a lot of them in here. Let's put a marker down so we can see what's going on. And if we come over to PyCharm, we can see it's continuing to update, but it's not continuing to update in the channel. So the GUID was saved. And if I were to restart the bot, it won't send anything there. Updating feeds for guild ID, and nothing got sent. So everything's working. It's functioning. So we can come back up here, and we can multiply this by 60, so it updates every 5 minutes. Like, you might actually set that to like every hour. I think 5 minutes is fine for right now. I could throw this up on a server, anything we want. Pretty fancy. I am going to put this up on GitHub. I'll announce that on the Discord when I do. I will add it to the README here. I just got to fix my Git. I'm not sure what I broke. We'll figure it out when I'm off the clock. You didn't have any questions, it looks like, so thanks for hanging out, Void. I know I had a few other people earlier on. Not everybody was able to stay on. We're all busy. But I think that was a good inaugural zech.builds stream. Had a little bit of chaos at the beginning, but we had fun. And we got the project done. Pretty cool. All right. One last thing. Let's just find out. I've got this fancy little utility I created for myself. Let's see. It's probably easier to run it this way. Projects. And then count.py. And if I do dot, permission denied. Because we have to do this. Boom. It's only in 153 lines over 3 files. We created an RSS feed reader that works on a bot that uses JSON for a database and will monitor all the RSS feeds every 5 minutes for changes. Pretty cool. Very cool, actually. All right. Y'all have a great night. Have a great day. I will see you guys in the future. How do I stop the stream? Well, that's the mystery. That's the mystery. Can I stop